The AM radio landscape in Canada is a little quiet right now. Several station shutdowns, including 660 and 960 The Fan here in Alberta, have left a significant portion of the AM radio band completely silent. It's unfortunate for us radio geeks, and it could be the end of AM radio in Canada. However, here we have a little transmitter board, and we're going to be doing some tests on it, some oscilloscope readings, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. You can buy these off of Amazon, off of AliExpress, off of probably some other websites as well. And this one provides up to 500 milliwatts of power. Unfortunately, because of CRTC regulations, we can't run it at full 500 milliwatts, but we'll have some fun with it anyway. So, stay tuned. So our setup looks a little bit confusing, but we can see our board right here, and we have the power going to our power supply, and I have it running through a filter capacitor just to remove some of the noise from our power supply. We have no signal going to the board right now. However, we do have a carrier wave right here. On the oscilloscope, you can see that our carrier wave probe to the antenna terminals on the board are at about 1080 kilohertz, or about 1.08 megahertz. If we adjust our frequency on the board here, you will notice that our carrier wave increases and decreases in frequency. We can actually make this a little bit smaller here, and the reason why, it's because near the end of the spectrum, around 1600 kilohertz to maybe 530, so just the very end of the spectrum, the wave is a lot smaller. But as we go towards the middle, as you can see, it does kind of grow a little bit, and we are decreasing the frequency, and that is our carrier frequency basically. So let's say if we leave it around where it was at, around 1080 kilohertz, you'll notice that that is our frequency that the transmitter is actually tuned to. Now we don't have any signal. We can actually apply a signal right now. So we're using actually we can use the oscilloscope itself to provide a signal for us, and you'll notice that our signal starts jumping around. We can actually reduce that here a little bit to see what's really going on here. And I think the reason why it's doing that, it's because our carrier frequency, our carrier wave frequency, is not cleanly divisible by our input frequency. So we're putting in about 1 kilohertz or so here, but if we tune our radio, it's a bit close. If we go to about 1000, we can hear our signal. We can turn that off. And that's basically how it works. So we have a couple of other controls here. We can actually listen to it here. Let's turn this back on.
Is this question. What does that mean to me? That's the big issue. You could be in awe. You could be amazed that
since AM is somewhat
detailed prophecies concerning a person's life and death and resurrection could be predicted 700 years before the person's video camera ready to film the
we can actually move our frequency here. There's just too much on this band right here. Let's move up to the end here, about 1600.
You should be in awe of the divine nature of Holy Scripture.
This is our modulation control right here. So we can set how much of the modulation the signal has. And this is our level. So we can turn that all the way down, but as we turn it up, since we have a whole volt coming out of this, it is quite big. And we can run really anything through this. Now, we do have to keep it at a very low power output in order to comply with CRTC regulations. And we don't really have an antenna connected. However, the antenna in this case would actually be our oscilloscope lead. And it doesn't go that far. If I move the radio to an arm's length, our signal disappears. So it's fine for now, basically. It's fine for testing. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that is to show about this one. We can kind of see what goes on. Then as we increase our frequency here, so we can actually see what goes on. How AM radio generally works is that our carrier frequency remains the same. However, these waveforms here are our input frequency being modulated in amplitude. So basically these would be the same as like a 1 kilohertz signal being amplified. However, as we zoom in, we notice that this is actually made up of our carrier signal, which is at 1.6 megahertz or 1600 kilohertz. And we're back. I'm just using a little loop antenna here. I had to change the frequency because there's just a lot of this radio is not very good at isolating certain frequencies, so kind of I feel like there's an AM broadcast transmitter pretty close to here because it's just kind of all over the dial, but that's okay. I found a frequency that more or less works for right here, and we're just running Relic Radio Strange Tales which is like some antique horror shows essentially, which I think is kind of appropriate for the AM dial. This is just a little bag of accessories that came with the board, and
I had the answer in a moment. A man moved past my window, going down toward the light. He had his collar turned up against the wind.
it's perfectly usable.
Low. But I knew who it was. Mr. Field. The small, furtive man who'd come upon the train with me. The two men met. Barely a stone's throw from my window. I could hardly see them huddled closely together. This was excitement.
So yeah, not a very purposeful video, but a very potentially educational one at that. Thank you for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and have a great rest of your day.